It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can get a hold of me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting if you reach out to me through my email, oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Really honored to have today Scott Camil. Now, this guy's an old-time Vietnam War activist. Today he's with the VFPGainesville.org, the Veterans for Peace, VFPGainesville.org. And they got a big event coming up December 13th. The 30th winter solstice, okay? And that's in Gainesville, Florida, at the Universal Fellowship at 7 p.m. But also, too, you can catch him on Netflix, Turning Point Vietnam 2025. It's a whole series. He was interviewed by the producer Brian Knappenberger for Netflix. But he's also, too, on Vietnam, The War That Changed America. That's on Apple TV. You can check that out, too. Mr. Scott Camil, are you there?
I am here. And let me say that the solstice is the 39th annual solstice.
The 30th, well, that's my handwriting for you. Okay, 39th winter solstice in Gainesville at the Universal Church Fellowship at 7 p.m. December 13th. You can go there in person. They have like a concert, right?
Yes.
Scott, before we get into your whole story, tell us about yourself. Who is Scott Camil?
I'm sorry, say again?
Yeah, before we get into your whole story with the Vietnam War and all your activism for peace, who is Scott Camil?
Well, I'm just a kid that was born in Brooklyn, New York. My parents divorced when I was around 4. We moved to Florida. I grew up in Hialeah, Florida. I went to Hialeah High. During that time, there was a draft. Military recruiters came and spoke to in the gym. We had all of the senior males. And they said, as soon as you guys graduate, you're going to get drafted and sent to Vietnam. But if you sign up early, you get more benefits. And I thought, well, more benefits sounds good to me. So I joined the Marine Corps in the delayed enlistment program. And 3 days after I graduated high school, I was in the Marines. And I went to my training at Parris Island and then Camp Geiger. And then guerrilla warfare, and escape and evasion, and demolition, and all kinds of training at Camp Pendleton. Then I went to Okinawa for more of the same kind of training, and then I went to Vietnam, and I spent 20 months in Vietnam. I was wounded twice, and when I came back from Vietnam, I still had 2 years left in the Marine Corps, and I went on a med cruise and a Carib cruise, and that was a big wake-up call for me because until that time, I really was under the impression that everyone liked America and everybody wanted to be like us. And then when I went to Europe, all the places we went, the people were nice to me, but the people expressed their dissatisfaction with what we were doing in Vietnam. After I got out of the Marine Corps, I was invited to go to the Winter Soldier investigation, which was an investigation on the war in Vietnam. And until that time, I was actually still supporting the war. And I had a very negative view of the anti-war people. And I remember when I was in Vietnam that I read a story in the Sea Tiger, which was the newspaper that we read when I was in the service. And there was a story about Joan Baez and her friends collecting blood at a concert and sending that blood through Canada to North Vietnam. And I read that story, and I couldn't believe it. And I thought, wow, I could get killed by a commie with American blood in them. And that made me really angry at the anti-war movement. And Then when I got out of the Marine Corps, I went to college, and I would, the people who were against the war, they would wear black armbands, and I would wear my Marine Corps tropical jacket, and I would bump into them in the halls and try to pick fights, and I just really, really hated the anti-war people. And then I graduated from school, and I got invited to go to the Winter Soldier investigation.
Well, Scott, let me interrupt for 1 second. Now, since you were so pro-war, what made this anti-war group invite you?
Actually, I don't know. Let me just think about that. Why did they invite me? I don't really remember.
Okay.
And they were Vietnam Veterans Against the War, and I'd never even heard of them. And I didn't really know what it was all about. And I think that one of the things that's really important about the Winter Soldier investigation for people to understand is they didn't say, "Hey, Scott, tell us about Vietnam. What was your experience like?" They said, "Scott, have you ever done these things or witnessed these things?" And they were focused in on a war crime kind of activity. And so I testified truthfully. I answered all of the questions. And then the third day, after the hearings were over, a person named Michael Oliver called a meeting of all the people that testified, and we all sat in a room, and he said, "Well, we've heard what everybody has to say. What are we going to do about it?" And before Winter Soldier, I only really knew about what I did in Vietnam when I was there. And the Vietnam War was 10 years long, and it was a different kind of war at different periods of time. So I was there from March of 1966 through November of 1967. But after Tet in 1968, the war changed. So when I was there, we really thought we could win. After Tet, it became obvious that we weren't going to win. At the Winter Soldier investigation, they asked questions about what we did, and we talked about things like our measurement. The official measurement of success in Vietnam was body count, and we were taught that if we killed 10 Vietnamese for every American that died, we would win. And our method of operation was called search and destroy. And I was taught that the duty of a Marine is to destroy the will of the enemy to resist the authority of the United States of America, and you do that by making the price they have to pay for their resistance more than they can afford. And so we were in free fire zones. We were allowed to kill whoever we saw, women, children, it didn't matter. Regardless of how you think, what kind of person you are, when you go to war, the first time you see a friend killed or wounded, it's a wake-up call. And I got to Nam on March 24th, 1966, and I was assigned to a unit, and as a new guy in the unit, I was put on guard duty, and on April 18th, our unit was attacked and overrun. And when I first got to the unit, people said, "Hey, man, where are you from?" And I said, "Oh, I'm from Florida." And they said, "Hey, Maine is from Florida." So my first friend was named Maine. The night of April 18th, we were attacked and overrun, and Maine was one of the people that was killed. And the next morning after the attack, there were dead Marines covered with ponchos next to a bunker, and I pulled the ponchos off their faces to see who they were, and one of them was my first friend, Maine. And at that point, I realized that I was in a place, and it was people's job to kill me, and they were allowed to do that. And there wasn't going to be any timeout, give me a second chance, or anything like that. If I got killed, I was going to be dead. And so I made the decision at that time that I would be ruthless, that I would have no empathy, that I wanted to come home alive, and that since I couldn't tell which Vietnamese wanted to kill me and which ones didn't, I would err on the side of safety and just kill all the Vietnamese I came in contact with, and that was my behavior.
Can't blame you, right? How old were you, like 18 years old?
I had my 20th and 21st birthdays in Vietnam.
Yeah, just a baby, right? You know, and then I can't blame you, man. You know, like you must have been peeing your pants, right?
Well, not really. I was really focused. Actually, my fitness report from Vietnam, which I'm proud of my fitness report. I gave 100%, but it says Sergeant Camil is extremely cool under fire, and he can be trusted to accomplish any mission assigned to him. And that's who I was.
So you made sergeant right away?
Not right away, but I made sergeant in under 2 years, so that's really quick.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, it's very impressive.
But in combat, rank is faster.
Right. So then what happens next?
I was a forward observer, and my job, so that's basically being a map reader, finding enemy positions and radioing their positions for artillery, mortars, airstrikes, naval gunfire, or infantry attacks.
So then while you were there, though, you didn't experience anything that you thought was a war crime at the time?
No, I didn't think in those terms. Well, but I would say now, as a more mature person, when you think about the idea of war, war is an institution made up of criminal behavior. That's okayed by the politicians, so if I don't like my neighbor, I can't shoot him, I can't torture him, I can't burn down his house, I can't do any of those things. But in war, those are the behaviors. Those behaviors that are used in war are really behaviors that are criminal behaviors outside of the institution of war. And when you go to war and you learn this technique for problem solving, and it's just killing. And then when you come home from Vietnam, that behavior helps you survive, and it's hard to get that behavior out of you.
That's an interesting question. So did you have any issues with that after shooting all those people every day over there in Vietnam? When you came back, did you said in college you were kind of trying to pick fights, but did you try and solve all of your problems with violence?
No, I didn't, but the violence was very close.
It was an option.
And I will say I'll tell you how bad it was when I came home from Vietnam. I still had 2 years left in the Marine Corps, and I was assigned riot control duty. There were demonstrations in Washington, and so we were on standby to go to Washington to quell the demonstrations. And I was a non-commissioned officer in charge of the 10th Marine Regiment riot control. And we were on standby to go to Washington, and I said, I gave the instruction, if anybody throws a rock or a bottle or anything at us, I want everybody to empty a magazine into the crowd. So a magazine is 20 rounds, and you have 200 people, each firing 20 rounds into a crowd. It would really be a massacre. When my commanding officer found out that I gave that instruction, I was relieved of that duty. But that's how much hostility I had towards the anti-war movement.
Yeah, and it's amazing that even in your head you thought that was possible. You know what I mean? I think you even thought that there was a possibility that you can get that kind of order.
Yes.
Yeah. So then what happened then? So you went to this Winter Soldier investigation. You started getting a view of some other people's point of views. Is that what made you start to change?
Yes. So like all I really knew about Vietnam was what I had seen and what I had done during the period that I was there. But at Winter Soldier, there were people there from all branches of service, from all periods of time, and there were even some Vietnamese there. And I met some Vietnamese, and I thought, wow, I can be friends with these people. And it just made me think about, why was I killing them? And the real reason I was killing them was because I was in a place where my life was at stake and my friends' lives were at stake. I'm really selfish. I want to lie. I want to live, and if that means I have to kill you so I can live, or if I have to kill you so my friends can live, then we're going to kill you. It's just that simple.
Mm. So then, what happens next?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, like after you went to this Winter Soldier investigation, what happens next? How'd you come out of there?
So after the public part was over, there was a meeting of all of us that testified, and in the meeting, Michael Oliver says, "What are we going to do about this? We all see the big picture now. What are we going to do about this?" So at that meeting, we decided to make Vietnam Veterans Against the War a national organization. Before that, it had been an organization in about 6 states in the Northeast. And so we took the country and we divided the country into 28 parts, and I became what was called the regional coordinator for Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. And it was my job to organize veterans and anti-war activities in Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. And so I thought the best thing to do was to have Winter Soldier investigations in each of the cities in my region. So in places like Miami, Orlando, Tampa, St. Pete, Atlanta, Georgia, in big cities like that, we got our members to have Winter Soldier investigations. And I thought, here, the people in the city, they will hear from veterans from their own city talk about what they did. And that will be a great learning experience for them to hear their own citizens talking about the conduct in Vietnam. So I organized Winter Soldier investigations, and we started having Winter Soldier investigations in those 3 states. And then all of a sudden I started getting arrested. And in a 6-month period, I was arrested on 18 charges, and I was facing death plus 120 years in prison. And I'm the kind of person I am. I'm not the kind of person you can really intimidate. And our behavior, when we have positive reinforcement for our behavior, that helps us continue that behavior. But when you're working against the war, and the war goes on another year and another year, there's not a lot of positive reinforcement. So for me, my positive reinforcement became my arrests. And I thought, if I wasn't being effective, they wouldn't be trying to arrest me. So every time they arrested me, it was saying to me, "Scott, you're on the right track. Keep doing what you're doing." And so their efforts to intimidate me really ended up emboldening me.
Well, Scott, if you're facing them with that, what kind of charges were these, man? You're facing life plus hundreds of years. What were they arresting for?
I was charged with kidnapping for ransom. I was accused of kidnapping a 16-year-old black male for $100 ransom, and the proof of the kidnapping was the receipt for the $100 that I wrote when I picked up the $100. And then I was also arrested on drug charges, possession and delivery of marijuana. And then after that, I was actually shot by federal agents and charged with possession and federal agents. In all of my trials, I was acquitted. And not only that, in my trial where I was shot by the federal agents, the jury came back and recommended that the agents be indicted for attempted murder. But, of course, nothing happened to them.
So you believe you are a target of the federal government because of your activism, or just trying to shed light on what was going on in the Vietnam War?
That's correct. So I was wounded twice in Vietnam. I'm defending the Constitution, and at least that's what I thought I was doing. And then I came home, and I started exercising those rights that I had fought for and bled for. You know, regular people have the rights under the Constitution, but they don't have to bleed for them. Not only did I didn't just inherit my rights, but I fought for those rights and I bled for those rights. And then I came home and exercised those rights, and I got shot for exercising those rights.
Were you achieving any success in drawing your light, drawing attention on what was going on in Vietnam? Is that why they were targeting you?
Yes. We were very effective because when people hear from their own citizens and from people who they know about the conduct of the war, it brings it home.
And what about just your personal life? You know, the people around you, your girlfriends, your parents, and stuff like that. They're all experiencing harassment too, just like you are. Were they supportive? Were they trying to talk you out of it?
No, everybody was really supportive. People felt that I was getting picked on, and I had a lot of support. Besides the federal authorities and the police, nobody else was trying to get me to quit my activities.
And what about the people? I'm sorry.
At first, my parents didn't understand. Like, they were really proud. I was a Marine sergeant. I went to Vietnam. I won medals, and they were really proud of me. And then when I came back and started working against the war, they thought that was unpatriotic, and they were very hostile towards me about that. But it didn't really matter to me because I believed in what I was doing.
And then what about your comrades around you? Did you start to suspect that some of them were maybe double agents or provocateurs and trying to snitch it on you?
Oh, well, there were a lot of those people,
yeah.
And when I first got started, I didn't realize that because what I was doing was exercising my constitutional rights. Why would the police be interested in me? And I didn't realize that they just wanted to shut up the people who they thought were working against U.S. policy. I was just really surprised at when they started coming after me, and again, it became my positive reinforcement,
yeah.
and eventually my parents came around.
And were your parents being targeted too, and girlfriends and friends and relatives, were they being targeted as well?
My parents weren't, but there were grand jury proceedings, and so in the Gainesville 8 case, a lot of my friends and people I worked with were subpoenaed to the grand jury, and then eventually 8 of us were indicted for conspiracy to disrupt the 1972 Republican Convention, and it was called the Gainesville 8 case. And I represented myself at that trial, and the jury found us all not guilty.
The Gainesville 8. Okay, so you guys went down to the I think that year the convention was in Florida, right?
Yeah. So we were going to go to Miami Beach,
right,
and demonstrate against the war. And we were going to demonstrate actually at both the Democratic Convention and the Republican Convention. We were charged with conspiracy to disrupt the convention using automatic weapons and explosives and a myriad of just a ton of different charges. So I wrote the plans for the convention, and those plans were in a document called called Newsletter 4. And that became the government's chief one of its chief piece of prosecution evidence against us. But the jury read the plans that I wrote, and the jury found us not guilty. And so in those plans, what I said was we would use the least amount of force necessary to protect our lives, our property, and our constitutional rights. So we were going to go down there and protest, and we had intelligence information that later turned out to be from undercover informants. So what happens is you start an anti-war organization, people come and say, I'm a Vietnam veteran, I'm against the war, I want to help. And they automatically become members. And the people who do the most work rise to the top. And so it was easy for informants to infiltrate us and provide us with faulty information. And so in our plans for the convention, we were going to go down there to exercise our constitutional rights. And the undercover informants told us that they had intelligence that the government was going to raise the 5 drawbridges that connect Miami Beach to the mainland, and that they were going to shoot someone at the convention, that they were going to blame that on the anti-war people, and that they were going to wipe out the demonstrators. So when we heard that, we made plans to not allow that to happen. And so those plans called for things like, if the drawbridges were raised, we would take those by force. We would take those bridges back, and we would lower the bridges so people would be able to get out of the beach. And when I was in riot control, we were taught that you have to leave the people you're trying to control an avenue of escape.
Right.
If you block them in, they will be forced to fight, and you don't want to fight. You want to move them. So when we saw the plans that they were going to raise the drawbridges and block everybody in, that's counter to what you're supposed to do. And so our plans called for lowering those drawbridges to allow people to escape, and also it called us to take aggressive action against government forces. So that would be police stations, fire stations, and federal buildings. And we would make attacks against them in 2 different counties, Broward County and Dade County, Florida. And the purpose of those attacks would be to cause the forces that were attacking the people on Miami Beach to have to retreat and go protect their own turf. Then we could lower the bridges and we could help people escape. So those were the plans. And the plans said, every other sentence said, we will use the least amount of force necessary. And the jury got to read those plans, and we were charged with conspiracy to disrupt the convention with violence, and the jury saw that was not our plans. And the jury, after reading the plans that I wrote, found us not guilty.
Well, these are very ambitious, even though they're self-defensive plans. These are very ambitious plans. Did you have the manpower to enact this type of operations?
Yes, we did.
How many men did you have?
How many what?
How much manpower did you have? How many troops, I guess you'd call them? How many operatives are at your disposal? How many people were you commanding?
Well, I think when we did the march on Washington and threw our medals away, there were about maybe 1,200 of us.
Okay. And how many did you have at your disposal in Florida for 72?
So I didn't really count numbers, and it didn't work that way. So we had regional coordinators.
Right.
So the different regional coordinators would come from their different cities, and they would bring the members with them, and each organizer that came down with members would be assigned a different target. So we had plenty of people to carry this out.
And they all had a military training.
Not just military training, but war experience.
Right. Combat training.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so now you don't know anything about me, but I come out of the Yippies myself. I'm 63 years old now, and I got involved with the Yippies in New York City around 76 until about 82. And I know that the Yippies were down there in 72. I think there was a problem with Abbie Hoffman and Jerry Rubin. They were kind of like put aside. And Tom Forcade was placed in a position of leadership. Were you dealing with the Yippies down there, and were you in coordination with them?
A little bit. Like we kept track of what everybody was doing, but they were doing something that didn't work for us. So
Gotcha.
to us, what's really important with our message is credibility. You have to stay honest with the public, and if you lie, your credibility is gone, and you have nothing. So you have to be honest. And the Yippies would say, "We're going to do this, we're going to do that," and then they wouldn't do it, and so that hurt their credibility, in my mind.
Gotcha. So then that was one of your high points in your career, I would guess, right? This managing this counteroffensive there to the government suppression of the protests over there at 72, right?
Well, it was a busy time.
Yeah, I bet. And did you experience? And you said you were charged, though, right? You were charged with you were arrested there during this operation?
Oh no, we got called to the grand jury before the convention.
Oh.
The convention was going to start on a Monday, and starting on Saturday, FBI agents all across the country started rounding up our people, and so there were 28 of us subpoenaed to the federal grand jury in Tallahassee. That kept us from going to the convention because we were in court at the grand jury, and the lawyers came, and the lawyers argued that since the grand jury can only see one person at a time, why do all 28 people have to be here? They wanted to get it staggered and have us come individually instead of all as a group, but the government kept us there all as a group, and then when the convention was over, only a handful of the 28 of us were called before the grand jury, and we didn't cooperate. So we had lawyers who came down from the Center for Constitutional Rights out of New York City and from the National Lawyers Guild out of Texas, and they schooled us on how things work. And they said, once you answer one question,
right,
then you have to answer the other questions, or you can be held in contempt for not. So you have to refuse to answer all the questions. So I got called before the grand jury, and the first question was, are you the same Scott Camil who was subpoenaed here today before the grand jury? And I said, I request permission to consult with my attorney, because our attorney said after each question, request to consult with them, because the attorneys are not allowed in the grand jury room.
Right.
And you go out and you tell them the question, and then they tell you what to say, and you go back in and you say, I refuse to answer this question on the grounds it violates my rights under the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments, and that kind of stuff. So, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so did I. But I did have another question for you, though, along these lines. Now, they must have, for them to preemptively round you guys up, and they had access to your typewritten plans, they must have had incredible surveillance on you guys.
They did. And so I was the regional coordinator, and the assistant regional coordinator was FBI. My state coordinator was FBI. And we had, so we had, when people come and say we want to help, we let them help,
Right.
and we had no way of knowing who were spies. And it didn't really matter to me because we weren't doing anything wrong. So I didn't care whether people were spying on us or not. Why should I care?
Well, they did disrupt the plans, and you want them for a grand jury. So what about today now? Because now you're running this VFPGainesville.org, the Veterans for Peace. What about today? Do you take precautions today? Well, let's start with this. First of all, do you still experience this kind of provocateurs and infiltration? Not to the same degree, but do you still see it?
So we still are very active, and so like right now, I would say that three main things that I think are really important that I try to work on. Climate change. Climate change affects the whole world, I think people can see that there's more storms, more flooding, more heat. It's time to do something about fossil fuels and try to get things under control. And some scientists believe we're already past the tipping point. So if like I'm a parent, and all parents want their children to have it better than they did, and now the whole world is at risk because of climate. So it's an extremely important issue. Another issue that's really important to me is the genocide taking place in Gaza. I'm Jewish, and I've been to Gaza. I've been to the West Bank. I'm appalled at the genocide and ethnic cleansing that's taking place. And if you criticize Israel, they have weaponized anti-Semitism. Yeah. And so if you criticize Israel's conduct, you're called anti-Semitic. And they use that to get people to keep their mouths shut. But because I'm Jewish, they can't call me anti-Semitic. So it's something that I think is important that I must do because as a Jewish person, I have the credibility to do that without being called anti-Semitic. And because I went to Israel on a fact-finding tour for Veterans for Peace, and I was in Gaza, I was in the West Bank, I was in Ramallah, I traveled all over, and I wouldn't have believed the things that I heard that they said Israel was doing to the Palestinians. I just couldn't believe them until I went and saw for myself. And so I'm a witness to what's going on there, and I'm working to stop our government. My taxpayers' money is paying to murder tens of thousands of women and children, civilians in Palestine, and I also work with an organization called Jewish Voice for Peace, and it's at the top of my list. And then for local stuff, it's ICE, the brown shirt. They wear masks. They beat people up. They attack the vulnerable. They're like the Nazi brown shirts. And I see our country moving towards fascism and authoritarianism, and I'm very unhappy with that. And I see a Supreme Court that I see is corrupt. I see a Congress that I see is corrupt. I see that the billionaires get to control everything and do what they want because the Supreme Court said that money was speech and allowed the rich people to control everything. So there's just a lot of stuff going on that calls for us to be active and to do something before we lose it all.
Well, these are all great. Your top three there, I'm in fully agreement with you. You know what I mean? But let me ask you a couple of questions from your experience, right? And you fighting against this Vietnam War, you had these military-trained guys that you could turn to, your former veteran friends. Now, when we see the situation with ICE, and now you're opposing ICE, which you're right, these are brown shirt fascists, man. And their budget is greater than the U.S. Marines at this point. But do you have resources now to oppose what we're seeing blatantly in our face now? This is serious business.
So I think the only resources we have is trying to raise public opinion and to make public the things that they're doing. And of course, Trump has just they just have new executive orders saying that you can't take pictures of ICE, you can't say who they are, you can't oppose them. They're making it criminal to stand up against ICE.
Yeah, it does seem, though, that in some areas of California that the people are, at the street level, organized to a degree that they are able to interfere with these ICE operations. As soon as they leave their headquarters, they're being tailed around and surrounded by, friendly forces. But do you see that down here in Florida? Is that possible down here? Because they're pretty right-wing down here.
Yeah, so those aren't friendly forces, they're thugs.
No, I mean our forces are surrounding the thugs.
So yes, Florida. We have ICE working here in Florida,
yeah.
They mainly pick on women and children and the poor, and they're just thugs. And
but my point is, Scott Camil, is like in California, in certain neighborhoods, when the people see that these ICE troops are coming through their neighborhoods, the people in the neighborhoods that come out of their homes and they surround them and they hinder their enforcements. Do you see that potential for us to have that kind of resistance here in Florida?
I would love to see that.
I'd love to see it too. What do you think? Do you think? Is there any hope?
I don't really know because I don't have a my finger on the pulse
Gotcha.
of the general Floridians and how they feel about stuff, and more importantly, how much are they willing to risk to stand up for the Constitution.
Well, then these local activists today, are they looking up to someone like Scott Camil, who has this experience, who has this wisdom, who's been in the trenches before? Are they coming to you for advice and strategy?
No.
Yeah, see?
I do strategize and work with people in my own community.
Yeah.
But I'm not part of any kind of national thing. And one of the things that they have going in LA, which is really good, is they have a network.
Yeah.
I would like to see that kind of network set up here, but it's a network when they see ICE going somewhere, they post it, and let people know the ICE vehicles are going to this neighborhood, the ICE vehicles are going to that neighborhood, and I think it's really important for them to expose where these jackbooted thugs are going.
Yeah, I'm very impressed too with Phoenix. Phoenix, Arizona has also put up a great resistance. Mr. Camil, you mentioned also too early on in your three main focuses today is climate change and the oil industry. So now when you're opposing the oil industry, before you were up against the government forces, the U.S. military, and I guess the U.S. military-industrial complex too as well. But opposing the oil industry, now you're opposing capitalist interests. So do you find that it's a more worthy adversary or a more dangerous adversary, either the government or financial capitalist interests? Which one do you find more dangerous?
I don't think you can separate them.
Yes, I'm sure.
Ask me that question one more time.
Well, I was asking you what you think is worse, and you're right. They're one and the same. They operate hand in hand. You're right. But your experience now, did you find that this opposing the oil industry and its capital industry interests in climate change more adversarial, more and more opposition than it was back in the Vietnam days?
It's a different kind of opposition.
Gotcha.
Because like we have a fascist governor.
Yeah.
And he makes rules to make it easier for them to do these kind of things. But rather than opposing the oil industry because of the climate, I would rather promote wind, solar, and environmentally safe options for change, as opposed to being against oil. I'm for solar. I'm for wind. I'm for those kind of things. It's easier to be for something than against something.
Now, what about, you're running now Veterans for Peace, VFPGainesville.org. How do you fund this operation? Do you have the kind of funds that you need?
We're really lucky here. So because I've lived here for so long, and because of my history with Vietnam Veterans Against the War, the Gainesville Aid, I'm very well known in the community, and I have a lot of support. And our main fundraising activity happens every December, and we have what's called the Winter Solstice. The Winter Solstice celebration, and we have a big concert, and all the musicians play for free, and it costs money to get into the concert. We put out a booklet, and the book is actually a nice sized booklet, and it's 8.5 by 11, and it's usually about 90 pages, and in that booklet it has all kinds of articles on all of the issues that we're concerned about. Different people write articles on these different subjects, and we also sell ads. And so from the tickets for the solstice, and where we get half of our money, and then from our ads we get the other half of our money, and we also sell T-shirts and bumper stickers and those kind of things. So we raise enough money at the solstice to fund all of our activities, and those activities include things like scholarships. So we have peace scholarships, and seniors in high school or starting freshmen in college, they can write a paper about the things that they are doing to work for peace and justice, and then we pick out winners, and we usually give out 4 $1,500 scholarships to those students, and we also have something called the Peace Poetry Contest, where we invite all of the students K through 12 in public and private schools to write poems about peace. And then we have a committee, and we read the poems, and we pick out the winners. And then we have an event where the winners come, a public event at the Unitarian Fellowship, and the winners read their poems. And they get a little booklet, and they get a certificate to be able to spend money at a bookstore and buy books. And so we have a lot of activities in our community, and we're very well known, and we do a lot of outreach.
Oh, yeah, these are great. That is great grassroots type of fundraising, and I love to hear that. December 13th, the 39th annual Winter Solstice in Gainesville, Florida. And what kind of bands can we hear if we come down? And by the way, in December, the weather's great down in Florida. And if you're up there in the Northeast in that snow, and take a little trip down to Gainesville. But what kind of bands are you going to have this year?
So we have local bands. They're all well known, and we have more bands who want to play than we have the ability to allow to play.
Gotcha.
So I'm in charge of organizing of the getting the publicity out, selling the tickets, selling the ads for a program, and then a person named Bill Hutchinson, who's one of the band people. He's the really master of ceremonies, and he's a musician. His job is to organize the bands, what songs they're going to play. They decide what who's going to play first, who's going to play second, and all of that stuff. And he's in charge of organizing that. And we work together and we get it done.
You know, almost out of time, but the third thing you had mentioned was the genocide in Gaza. And you mentioned about how anti-Semitism is being weaponized, you know. But then, on the other hand, we do see an increase in anti-Semitism, and mainly because of things like the war in Gaza. Like, my last name is Opperman. I'm not even Jewish, and I get anti-Semitism. People attack me because my name sounds too close to being Jewish. So that's like a fine edge, right? Like, how do you deal with something like that? How do we go forward and not encourage anti-Semitism at the same time as discouraging this war genocide?
So our work is against Israeli policy,
right,
not against Jews. And we work with an organization called Jewish Voice for Peace. Mm-hmm. And there's a big difference between Zionists and Jews who support peace. Me, Scott Camil, I went to Israel, Palestine, on a fact-finding tour. Mm-hmm. And when I went there, I supported Israel because I'm Jewish, and I didn't believe all the stuff people said. And then when I came back from my fact-finding tour, I switched sides because I saw firsthand the treatment of the Palestinians, and it was unacceptable to me. So when you think about behavior, you don't have you can hold a person's behavior against them, but you can't hold against them things that are not behavioral. So you can't discriminate against a woman because she's a woman. You can't discriminate against a black person because they're a black person. You discriminate. If you're going to discriminate, you discriminate against behavior that you find wrong, that you believe is wrong. And so I went to over there, and I saw these things, and I came back, and I started working against U.S. policy in support of Israel and working against Israeli policy. You know, I didn't choose to be born a white male in America. If I would have been born a male in Palestine, and I would be the same person I am, they would be trying to wipe out my family just because I was born there. You know, that just can't be right. That's just unacceptable. And you cannot punish people for things that are not behavioral.
We were talking to Scott Camil, Veterans for Peace, VFPGainesville.org. And you can find him at this event here, the winter solstice, December 13th in Gainesville, Florida, at 7 p.m. at the Universal Fellowship. But also, too, if you watch Turning Point Vietnam 2025 on Netflix, it's a Netflix series by Brian Knappenberger on Netflix, and also on Apple TV, Vietnam, the War That Changed America. So, Mr. Camil, before our time runs out, you've been around a long time, and you've been fighting fascism. You've been resisting fascism, resisting the war for peace all these years. Do you have any regrets?
Well, I like who I am, and who I am is based on my experiences, and some of those experiences, like things that I did to people in Vietnam, I regret, but those things made me who I am, and so you learn from your mistakes, and so I have regrets. I have made mistakes. I learn from those mistakes, and I go forward.
I really meant, though, do you have any regrets about living a life of resistance? You know, it's a tough road. Do you have any regrets devoting your life to justice and peace and resistance?
No, because you have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and like that person. And I want you have to set an example. I have children. I have grandchildren. And you have to set an example of doing the right thing. And I'm happy to do that.
Well, and we thank you for your service. We really do. Scott Camil, what a life of resistance, like I said, and doing the right thing, the honorable thing. Veterans for Peace, VFPGainesville.org, and meet Mr. Camil in person on December 13th at the 39th Winter Solstice. Thank you so much. And anytime you want to come back, you got anything on your heart you want to talk about, an event you want to promote, give us a call. We'll put you right back in here, okay?
It'll be my pleasure. Thank you so much, Ted.
No, thank you, sir. Okay, thank you. Good night.
I think